Hello everyone, this is Alex does Sudoku, and we have a medium New York Times Sudoku for you today on Wednesday the 26th of August 2020. If you haven't already, I have made a zero notation medium puzzle for you today, for those who want a bit more challenge basically. I think it's a relatively easier one today. I didn't feel particularly stuck at any point. I felt like I was always making progress. But in light of consistency, I want to make sure that I can still help anyone who's struggling on medium puzzles at the moment. So I'm also going to do a video with Snyder notations, because I think the New York Times mediums are typically solvable with Snyder notations, with possibly some additional logic. And let's see how we do that today. So to start with, Snyder notation is basically when you look at a cage, and if you know that there are only two candidates left within the cage for a particular number, you populate them. If there's only one candidate, that means that's your confirmed number. But if you have more than two candidates, you just leave them alone for now. And what it does is it reduces the amount of notations that you have on your board. So imagine if you're doing this on pen and paper, you're not going to bombard yourself with just sheer volume of pencil markings. And a lot of the times the pencil markings, like minimal pencil markings, will actually help you solve the puzzle anyway. So anyway, let's look through from 1 to 9. What we do is we use the numbers, and we basically draw lines with them stretching out in the rows and columns, and also within the cages. But currently, we're typically looking at how to interact with other cages, because we're looking for the missing numbers, basically. So I'm looking at the cages over here, cages down here, particularly where the cages overlap, and see if it erases enough ones that only have two candidates left. So I'm out of candidates with one, so let's try twos. So what's always good to do is, if you've got two sets of two numbers of the same value in two cages that are lined up either vertically or horizontally, that's always easy to basically see that the columns or the rows have been blocked out by the two digits, by the two candidates, which means it leaves you with only one column in this case. But sometimes if you're looking horizontally, like these two nines, it leaves you with a single row left, basically. Then, along this column, if I can see that number horizontally, I can see a 2 here. That means I'm only left with two possible cells. So that's another way of visualizing how to deduce numbers. But sometimes you are going to find, like this 2 and that 2, they don't interact, they're not in cages that are lined up vertically or horizontally. So you just kind of have to like draw cross-section lines and see where they interact. So similarly, this 2 looks up and that 2 looks across, but that leaves us with 4 possible 2s in that cage, and we're going to leave it alone, basically. And also, just to clarify, when I say cage, I'm talking about a box of 9 digits and 9 numbers within a grid. So I basically call individual boxes a cell, a set of 9 as a cage, and the entire thing as either a grid or a board. Some people call the cages boxes, but I think I worry that when I say boxes, it could be confused as just an individual box, basically, because technically they are boxes within the boxes. So cages just seems quite obvious, because a cage obviously have wires or bars locking your prisoner in, and we are trying to lock cells in as well. So anyway, I've done a lot of talking now, so I couldn't find any candidates for 3, so I'm going to move on to 4s, and these two 4s interact nicely. That one locks those cells, and that one locks that row, so I've got a pair of 4s down there. So that creates what's called a pointer pair. Considering the 4 has to go in one of these two cells within this cage, then this column 3, is basically ruled out, because we already know in column 3 where the 4 goes. So we can't have any more 4s down here in this cage, meaning we've got ourselves another pair of 4s down there basically. So if you would like me to do like more explanation videos about kind of like these specific techniques, I can do dedicated videos just to clarify what I mean by pointer pairs or hidden pairs, triples, naked singles, all these terminologies. I'm quite happy to do those videos just as a bit of an archive, and then I guess I can link to them. So sometimes what you'll find is a single value, a single digit can actually lock 2 candidates in a cage, because in this cage, once these 3 cells are ruled out, we've got ourselves a pair in the corners. But they don't form a pointed pair because they're not lined up either horizontally or vertically, and we ignore diagonals anyway because there are no diagonal properties within Sudokus. So let's see, have we got anything else? I can't see anything else from 5, so 6s, I've got these 2 6s that are lined up, and immediately looking down I can see I've got a confirmed 6 down here. So now this 6 can be used in tandem with other digits. So these 2 6s lock these 3 cells. But we have an interesting property here. We've got a matching pair of 1s and 2s. That means if the 1 goes there, the 2 can't, so the 2 has to go there. And if the 1 goes in this cell instead, the 2 will be forced into the other cell. So these 2 cells can't actually contain any other digits, because the way we do candidates is we're basically saying 1s can't go in any of the other cells, 2s can't go in any of the other cells because they're already locked in these 2 cells. So with that in mind, we combine it with the 6. These 2 cells are out of play. That 6 locks that cell, and that 6 locks that cell. That actually gives us another pair of 6s over here, basically. So matching pairs are quite often discoverable by Snyder notations. When you've notated one number and you notate another set of numbers immediately on top of each other, then you've got yourself a matching pair, basically. So that's always useful to know. But other times you do have to look for hidden pairs, basically, where you don't necessarily pencil mark in, you've only got one pair, or even neither, but you have to deduce it using other logics and find a pair within a column, within a cage, or within, well, I think within a cage you'll be able to find them anyway, but sometimes it's the column and rows that hides the hidden pairs, and those are trickier to find, basically. Moving on, we've got 7s, locks, a pair of 7s over here, because at the top the 2 rows are used up, and we can't do anything else. So looking at this 8 also sees into these 3 cells, so it also locks a pair of 8 and 5s here. So now the 5 and 8s can't go in these cells, and whatever number goes in these cells cannot go in the 5 and 8 either, so that's useful as well. This 8 and this 8 interacts, locking these cells. But there's an additional property within this cage as well. So this is slightly more advanced, but we know that the 8 has to be in one of these 2 cells because it can't go in the other cage. It can't go into this column anymore. So in this cage, the 8 has to go in one of these 2 cells, and we already see one of the 8. So that actually has to be an 8 anyway. It can't actually be anywhere else. So based on that, one of the 8s has to be in this column, but I see an 8 over here. So those are the 2 possible candidates for the 8. And, oh, actually, I missed something over here. This 8 sees into that cell as well. So I was focused on that single 8, creating a matching pair that I forgot to look down to see another 8 here. So that basically forces the 8 out of this cell. So if I erase the candidate, the 8 can only go in that cell. And remember what we said about matching pairs? If one goes in one cell, the other has to go in the other. So now it's worth just having a quick look at this 5, because it forms a relationship with that 5, locking a pair of 5s over here, but that 5 sees into that cell, so that is actually a 5 as well. So now these 2 5s forms a relationship, locking another pair of 5s down here. So now we've got a 4-5 pair. What does that help us with? Well, it helps us in different ways. That 2 sees into this cage as well, sees into that cell. So we know the 2 has to be in one of these 2 cells as well now. So by putting the 2's in, we've got another matching pair. So these 4 cells are now out of play, meaning whatever's left. So we've got 5 digits left within this cage. We've got 4 of the numbers locked down in 4 cells. That means the remaining cell has to contain that number. And in this case, it's a 3. So this 3, I'm kind of like following this chain reaction basically to see what's happening. So I'm kind of breaking the norm of just following the numbers at the moment. So this 3 forms a relationship with that 3 as well, locking a pair of 3's over here because that 3 sees into that column. And finally, I've run out of things to do, so this pair of 3's doesn't actually do any additional things for me, so I'm going to rewind back to this 3. Does this 3 do anything else for us? What about looking up? Not really. It doesn't form any more pairs, so that's no use for us anymore. So let's rewind back. We pencil marked in a pair of 2's, so they're pointed pair of 2's, so they look up, locking these cells, and leaving us with 3 possible candidates. But they also look up here, interacting with that 2. They give us another pair of 2's here actually. So we've got 2 sets of pointed pair of 2's, and they basically lock columns 2's and 3, giving us another pair of 2's over here. So kind of it's slightly more advanced now using pointed pairs to kind of find relationships. So don't worry too much if you can't see them just yet, because I don't think you need to at this stage with medium puzzles. But it just, if you do notice the logic, you can use the pointer pair logic to do plenty right now already. So I think we found the 2's because of the 6 over here. So does a 6 do anything else? I can't see anything over here, and we pencil marked in those 6's earlier. So I think that's all we can do with the 6's. And I think 6 was what we were on before. So with that in mind, let's carry on with the 7's. Oh, actually, we did do this. Oh, I think we were doing the 8's before, yeah. I think we put an 8 in there before, and that formed a pair of 8's down here, which led me to looking for more things possibly. So does this 8 do anything else? Well, it interacts with that 8 on the horizontal axis, and that gives us another pair of 8, but the 8 sees one of the 8's anyway, so that's now got to be the 8. And now this 8, with this 8, looks up into this cage, locking these cells, and we also have a pair of 8's locking these cells, meaning that's also an 8. So now I think we're closing down on the 8's. We've got 6 8's now. That means there are only two 8's left. And in theory, if we can't resolve them, they must occupy 4 cells. But if we look at this 8 and that 8, basically the final 8 is locked in these 2 cells. So those are the 8's all pencil marked in or populated already on the grid. So let's move on to 9's. Well, I can see a pair of 9's here. So that locks a pair of 9's up there. These 2 9's also forms a relationship with that 9 up here, which locks a pair of 9's there, and that creates another pair of 4's and 9's. So I'm going to jump forward a little bit with more advanced logic. Like we did before with 4 5 2 8, we basically locked these 4 cells with 4 numbers. Well, we've done the same thing here on this column. 4 8 2 9 are locked in these 4 cells. So that means these 2 cells have to contain the remaining digits, and we're missing a 1 and a 7. So it's worth having a look to see, can I see a 7 or a 1 in these 2 cages or rows? Unfortunately, we can't, so we're going to have to give up that route of thinking. So we didn't get anything in this instance, but sometimes you'll find that it'll immediately unlock a number for you. But since we didn't, well, let's continue on with the 9's and see if we can do anything else. So this 9 sees into this cell here. This is a bit of an advanced logic, but actually, I'll tell you what. Let me continue on with the normal logics first. So these 2 9's lock the columns, and that 9 sees the rows, so we've got another matching pair there with 2's and 9's. So we're having a lot of matching pairs here, which is quite nice. What else can we do? and 9's over here, so that 9 locks these two cells. I think it's time to move on to the advanced logic here that I saw. So in this cage, the 9 can only go in these two cells, which are columns 5 and 6. Well, if you look at this cage here as well, the 9 has actually blocked out column 4, so the 9, wherever it is, has to be in columns 5 and 6. What that means is I've got two cages where the 9 has to be in columns 5 and 6. So by process of elimination, on the third cage, the remaining cage, the 9 has to be in a column that we haven't had any candidates yet. So the 9 therefore has to be in these two cells as well. So I don't tend to use that logic much on medium puzzles, but on hard puzzles sometimes you need to use that logic. So just thought I'd point that out whilst we have the opportunity, basically. So now we've gone through the grid from 1 to 9. We've done a fair bit of pencil marking, and what we can do now is we've got two options. One is to basically go around the board and see if we can fill in any more candidates from 1 to 9 again, or we can go around the board and look at the weaker areas and see if we can actually resolve any of the numbers. And by weak areas, I generally mean areas that contain 2 free cells left. So these 2 cells are still free for play because the other 4 are actually locked in. But we've already looked at that, so that's not too useful. So one option is looking at two remaining cells in either column, row, or a cage. And in fact, we've got another 2 cells here that are locked in because that cell can only be a 4 or 9. So, well, if we look at the column, we know we're missing a 4 or 9 on this row because we've got the pencil marking in here. If that can't be a 4 or 9, then these 2 cells would have resolved itself already, basically. So I just need to look for one more digit, which is the 7. So I'm looking for 4, 7, and 9 in these 3 cells. So I'll just have a quick look. 4, 7, and 9. I can only see a 7 here. So what does that mean? Well, 7 can't go in there because the 4s and 9 are locked in. But that cell can't be a 7 either. So in fact, that cell has to be a 7 now. So this cell has to be a 4 or a 9. But I don't know which one it is yet. But I'm not going to pencil mark them in because if I pencil mark in a single number, I'll just confuse myself later because when I look around the board, I'm expecting that whenever I have one number, that has to be the correct one number within the cage, one pencil marking within the cage, that has to be the correct number. But now I have one number, 1 4 and 1 9, then it kind of like creates a bit of a conflict. So typically you don't need to pencil mark in the columns and rows for pairs at medium puzzles. Sometimes you may need to on hard just to help yourself keep track, but you just got to be very careful if you do that you don't kind of assume that 4 can only go in that cell or 9 can only go in that cell, basically. So that 7, by placing it, locks another pair of 7s down here because of these 2 7s, so we have yet another matching pair. So evidently this puzzle is all about matching pairs. So right now we can't see any other 7s that have that forms a relationship with this 7, but if we look in this cage, we actually have 7 locked down on row number 2. So actually that's called a pointer triple. Basically 7 has to go in there, so this row is entirely locked out from 7s. So that forms a relationship with that 7, locking a 7 in these 3 cells, but we have a 7 down there already, which means 7 has to be locked in these 2 cells. So there's been quite a few advanced logics today with medium, but I hope it's beneficial to your future attempts on mediums. However, what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to go around the board quickly and see if I can do any more pencil marking in just to keep the video short, basically. So I can see a pair of 1s there, 1, 1. So that 1 forms a relationship with those as well, so a pointer triple there, so those are 1s as well. So 1, 1, 2s. Have I pencil marked in all the 2s? No, I haven't. So 2, 2. So there are 3 possible candidates, so that's no use for me. 3s. So bearing in mind these 2 cells are now out of play, can I do anything with that? Doesn't look like I can actually, but I've got another pair of 3s there. So 3, 3, 3, 3. Okay, so I've got a pointer pair of 3s here because of that 3, and these 7 and 9s are locked. So these 2 cells are out of play, so they create a pointer pair of 3s, which means that can't be a 3 anymore, and that basically tells me that is now the 3. So that's great, because now that 3 looks into this cage. I mean, we could also use that 3 to lock those 2 cells as well. However, we already have a pair of 4s and 9s in there anyway, so I already know 3 has to be locked in that cell. And I just erased a 2, so within this cage there should only be 1 2 left, and that's over there. So when I put in the 2, I'll erase a 1, so the only 1 left is in here, and I've just erased a 7, so the only 7 left is in there. So we've basically filled in most of this cage, and on this row we're now left with just 1 candidate left, and if we go around the digits it is a 6. So can I do anything with that 6? Yes, I can. This 6 sees that pencil marking, so it takes out the 6, leaving me with a single 6 down here. And this 6, does it do anything? Well, it locks a pair of 6s over here because of these 2 6s. Anything else I can do? I think that's it. However, if I look at the column now, I've got 7 and 9 locked, those 2 cells, so there's only 1 candidate left, and it's a 4, and with that 4, I can break this 4 and 5 pair, because that can't be a 4 anymore. This has to be the 4, and that has to be the 5. And also, on this column, I just quickly noticed there's only 1 candidate left, and it's a 1, therefore 1 can't go there anymore. It's always worth cleaning out the pencil markings, because if you don't, you don't necessarily know that you've got a naked digit left, basically. So right now we have a naked digit left because 4 and 9 are out of play, 2 and 8 are out of play, and the only digit left on this column is a 7. So we've just had to resolve another 7. So now the 7 looks into the 7 and 9 pair, so, oops, that tells me that's a 9 and 7, basically. And this 9 further looks into here, locking out the 9, so 9 and 2 are now resolved. So do they do anything? This 2 looks back into the original cage we start from, locking a 2 over here, and this is now a 3. Oops, this is now a 3. So with that 3 erases that pencil mark, giving us another 3 over here. So now these 2 3s forms a relationship. Continue looking in, locking a pair of 3s over here, but I see a 3 up there, so that's got to be a 3. So we've done a lot within these 3 cages very quickly. This 3 continues to break a 3 out in here, and I think that's all the 3s. So let's go back to this 3 for a second. Filling in that 3 tells me that there's only 1 cell left, 1 candidate left in this row, and it's a 1. So that's a 1, and does it do anything else for us? Well, it looks down to this cage, and that one looks into these 2 cells, so I've got a pair of 1s in these 2 cells, and it looks up as well, locking a pair of 1s there. They're not very useful right now, but hey ho. Well, since we're on 1s, why don't we continue on and follow the numbers? What about 2s? Well, that 2 sees into that cell, so that tells me I've got a pair of 2s over here, and I think now we've pencil marked in all the 2s, but we haven't resolved them just yet. 3s we've finished, so let's look at 4s. So what can we do with 4s? Well, these 2 4s locks a pair of 4s up here, but I've got a 4 up there already looking into that cell, so that resolves the 4. Unless I put in the 4, I've just erased a 6, so that has to be a 6 now. So does that 6 do anything for us? Not immediately, so, and I feel like we don't need to do any more pencil marking right now. If you want to, it's worth just putting the pencil marking in just to help yourself see any new relationships, basically. But the reason there's no point in putting in the pencil marking, in my opinion, is because whilst they form a pointer pair, I've already resolved all the sixes on the other side. So eventually, I'm gonna deduce these numbers anyway. So there's not a huge amount of points to put those pencil marking in. Let's quickly look in this cage. I've got 9 and 5, but I can't see any 5, so actually that's no use. So let's rewind back to we were looking at 4s. So that 4 and that 4 forms a pair of 4s there, and I've also got a pair of 4s in. Actually, I've got 3 possible 4s over here, so maybe it is worth pencil marking things in. So let's pencil mark in these 4s. What about 5s? 5. So I've got a pair of 5s there, and a pair of 5s over here now, because of the, I mean, we can't put a 5 in this row anyway, and I've got a 5 down here, locking a pair of 5s down here, and I've got a 5 looking down to this cell, so this is now a 5, and that pushes out the 8, which pushes out the 7, and pushes out the 1, and that forms a nice little chain, and that's the kind of thing that Snyder notation is really strong at. It creates a lot of chain reactions for us. This one now forms a chain reaction over here, resolving the 2 and 1, and that 2 further sees into these 2 cells and resolves the 2 and the 8. And what else can the 2 do? Well, the 2 looks up here, resolving the 2 up here, and that's all the 2's done. Now, let's go back to this 1 as well. This 1 sees into that cell, locking a pair of 1's down here, but I've got a 1 over there, so that's got to be the 1. This 1 sees into that 1, so that's all the 1's resolved. And what else can we do? 4, 5, 6, 7. So 7 is locked in that cell because of that 7, or even that 7. So that's, oh sorry, there's already a 7 in there, so I was being blinded there. Where else can a 7 go? Well, there has to be a 7 in this column, and I've got a 7 over here, so that actually locks a 7 up there. That 7, actually let's do the 6 as well, which erases that 6, which resolves that 6, and I think that's all the 6 is done. So this 7 also sees into this row, and in conjunction with that 7 resolves this 7, which in turn resolves that 4, which in turn resolves the 5, and that 5 resolves the 5 over here, and resolves this 5, and 9, and that resolves the 9 over here, 9 over here, 4 over here, 4 over here, and 4 over here. And yeah, that's today's medium Sudoku with explanations and proper walkthrough. I hope it's been helpful. It did feel like I used some fairly advanced techniques. I think you can probably do it without a lot of those techniques, and maybe I should stick to that. If you have any feedback about if I'm going too fast or if I'm going too slow, please leave a comment below. If you like it, you know, if the video has been helpful, please leave a like and subscribe if you want to see daily Sudoku solve videos. I am doing a walkthrough every day for at least the hard puzzles, and possibly mediums as well. But I think with mediums, I kind of bounce between different techniques every day just to see either do speed solve, no candidate, or normal solve basically. But on some days I'll do like go out of my way to do explanations as well. But I think I'll only know what I should be doing if you guys give me feedback basically. So please let me know. Otherwise, I shall see you guys tomorrow. Bye!